They're here.
So yeah, at first, I just didn't know what to do.
At first, Daddy was confused.
I didn't know it was going to affect people in Nassau and Freeport.
And then I told him it was just the first 3 numbers.
Our new phone numbers have arrived, but there is no need to be afraid. Only the first 3 numbers have changed. The new numbers are in effect now.
Good Sunday evening, everyone. You're tuned into NB12, the Weekend Edition. Coming up tonight in news, the Commissioner of Police dismisses threats by the Police Staff Association to take legal action.
The Commissioner is not going to be dictated to.
Government dishes out hundreds of thousands of dollars to foreign consultants. A $12 million agriculture institute for Andros. Plus, you should see a slight reduction in your light bill this month. We'll tell you how much. The details of those stories and a whole lot more are on the way. I'm Bonitude, and NB12 Weekend starts now. Topping news tonight, following threats of legal action by the Police Staff Association, Commissioner of Police Alison Greenslade is speaking out on the growing controversy surrounding 12-hour work shifts. It's a key component of the new crime plan unveiled by the National Security Minister last month. In an exclusive interview with NB12, Greenslade asserted that he will not be dictated to, adding that officers will remain on 12-hour shifts for as long as he deems fit.
It may be a full year, it may be 2 years, realistically, for as long as it takes. You see, because that makes the point that I want the public to understand. The Commissioner is not going to be dictated to, and I operate within the law.
For weeks, the police chief sat back in silence and watched as executives of the Police Staff Association criticized 12-hour shifts, insisting officers are tired but have not been compensated for their hard work. In fact, PSA Chairman Inspector Dwight Smith recently asserted that if something doesn't change soon, the association might be forced to take its concerns to court. Well, Greenslade made it clear he will not tolerate disrespect.
We have to all be very careful when we speak, the Commissioner and all of us, that we do not say the wrong things and we do not step out of order. Because our actions, our disposition, and the words that we speak makes a huge difference. The Commissioner is in charge of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and in law reserves the right to determine how police officers will work.
The Commissioner warned the PSA to know its role, reminding executives that Inspector Smith doesn't run the force, he does. When asked if police officers would be compensated for longer working hours, Greenslade said this.
That is a non-issue.
Greenslade noted this isn't the first time police have been called on to work 12-hour shifts, and it won't be the last. He says he is often required to work from 6 in the morning and well into the night. The Commissioner asserted there is no one else on the force who cares as much for police officers as he does. In fact, he revealed that the force has spent 6 figures to feed officers on those shifts.
But I'm not sure that you're going to find many organizations that enjoy the benefits that the Royal Bahamas Police Force enjoys. I just signed off on well over $100,000 for welfare to ensure that officers receive a hot meal on every shift. I just did that. That's money from the taxpayers of the Bahamas. I don't hear the Bahamian complaining, the public complaining and saying that we shouldn't do that for our officers.
However, there was one request made by the PSA that the Commissioner was happy to grant.
I swore in 64 young Bahamian men and women who now have jobs and will get a salary. And I'm going to be moving forward for another squad of 32 in about 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, and subsequently another squad, and we'll continue to roll them.
Just over a month after an increased number of police officers hit the streets, Greenslade says he is pleased by the tremendous work that has been done. More importantly, he says officers and members of the public are also excited by the progress made in the war against crime. In fact, officers from Firearms Tracing and Investigations Unit and mobile units have taken 10 illegal firearms off the streets of New Providence in the past 48 hours. Greenslade says authorities are also considering a gun buyback initiative.
The amount of weapons taken off the streets, illegal weapons, significant, well over 30 to date, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Murders figures have certainly diminished. So we haven't had many reports of murders post the initiative. And I believe more particularly, sentiments from members of the public to the extent that we don't feel as fearful. You may recall that the conversation is normally centered around the fear of crime, and that being sometimes worse than crime itself. But members of the public at all strata of society saying, I feel a bit more comfortable moving about.
When asked if he expects to see a reduction in the total number of murders at the end of the year, the commissioner insisted there is no guarantee people will, quote, behave themselves.
When a man or woman purposes in his or her heart to commit an evil deed to the extent of murdering another human being, I'm not sure that there's much that we are able to do about that. It takes the good Lord and Master to see the hearts of people and to give us the wisdom to sometimes just be in the right places to hopefully prevent it. So we do a lot of work on the prevention side of things, but don't fool yourselves. I'm not sure where you're going to find any magician police officer in the world.
And in other news, in the lead-up to the failed gambling referendum held back in January, government reportedly paid foreign consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars. Earlier this month, the Free National Movement demanded that government table referendum costs as well as the amount spent on those consultants. Officials revealed how much was spent on the poll, but not gaming experts. Minister responsible for gaming, Obi Wilshcombe, said he did not know the exact figure offhand, but asserted it was six figures, not in the millions.
Oh, no, not at all. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you don't spend millions of dollars, not at all.
And it was money well spent.
Well, absolutely. You have to invest to cause your legislation to improve. We paid them to help us in the modernization of the Gaming Act. They were here as a part of the referendum, but they were focused on the modernization of the Gaming Act, which we'll lay on the table of the House of Assembly very shortly.
The Christie administration engaged UK-based consultants to advise it on gambling ahead of the referendum and later hired South African consultants to advise it on gaming laws. Wilshcombe called it money well spent, noting that the Bahamas lost its competitive edge in gaming and is now hell-bent on reclaiming it by modernizing its gaming laws.
You have to reach out to get the support you require for the legislation, and we wanted to get widespread. We had recommendations that came from the gaming industry itself in the Bahamas. We wanted it to be checked against what's going on in the world community. We wanted legislation put in place that would help us today, tomorrow, and beyond. And we wanted to ensure that we do have the reach to be able to, when we have to, improve upon what we have to do. But right now, the Bahamas is not doing as well as it can be doing. In gaming, we want to make sure that we triple what we're earning now in gaming from about 150 to 200 million. We want to get to about $600-700 million.
Construction on the Agricultural Institute set for Andros is still in the early stages, but it's going to cost taxpayers a lot more than they initially bargained for. In January, the cost of the school was estimated at $1 million. Later in May, it was projected at $4 million. Now, 10 months later, that cost has ballooned to more than 12 times the original figure. Christina McNeil tells us why in this report.
$12 million. That's the low-end figure Agriculture and Marine Resources Minister V. Alfred Gray says it may cost to construct an agricultural institute on Andros. But that's also 12 times the initial amount government said it may cost to construct the institute. However, Gray says the Bahamas can afford it. With a food import bill of around $500 million per year, it makes sense that government would attempt to cut it down. But at what cost? Gray telling reporters that since the initial discussions about the institute began, costs have ballooned and may extend up to $20 million.
The figures are being toyed around between 12 and 20 million.
So 4 million is not going to do it. It's about the base will be 12. But the ceiling we hope will be 20. So between 12 and 20. That should give us a good educational school, marine science school, and agricultural school all in one. As we discuss the school, more things have become enlightened to us. And so what we thought we could do have been broadened by multiples. By that I mean if we intended to put 5 buildings for teachers, now we may have to put 10 buildings for teachers alone. And so it's the multiplying effect of what we intend to do that causes the price to increase.
Gray says he believes the Bahamas can begin to produce as much as 45 to 50% of the food we consume here at home to improve food security. The school is expected to enroll its first class of students in September 2014, but in the meantime, there's a lot of work to be done. The school is set for North Andros on the site of a former agricultural school and testing ground for United States students.
This used to be the site of Bartard, the agricultural center that was built some 20, 30 years ago by the American government for the Bahamian people. It closed about 15, 20 years ago, and we are resurrecting some of those buildings, and we're going to build some new ones because what we had there will never be sufficient for what we envision this site will become.
Gray says a city will be built around the Institute, which should be about 10 minutes away from the North Andros Airport. It was during the 2013-2014 budget communication that the Prime Minister first revealed plans for the Institute on Andros, projecting that it will be self-sustaining within 5 years. In addition to the Agricultural Center, the government also plans to install greenhouses at various facilities across the Bahamas. The move toward food security may involve partnerships and assistance from foreign investors, but Gray notes that Bahamians will be the ones to benefit in the end.
My view is that if we can get Bahamians and foreigners to do it in large numbers, that's 40% of which I spoke a moment ago could become 75%. And so we're far from being sufficient. And any help we can get with the economic returns attached to it, I welcome it.
The Bahamas currently produces about 10 to 15% of what we consume. Reporting for NB12, I'm Christina McNeil.